Associations are only as good as the people that are in them. So I'm very pleased to introduce Tim Bonnell Jr. for today's AAOA Member Highlight interview. Tim has been one of the founding voices behind AAOA, and he brings exactly the kind of practical, relationship-driven expertise this alliance was created to showcase. AAOA exists to bring together the professional services involved in smoother, better-informed aircraft transactions, from insurance and risk management to legal, tax, financing, operations, marketing, and support services. Tim's work sits right at the center of that ecosystem. In aviation, insurance is never just a checkbox. It affects risk, deal structure, operational decisions, and the surprises that can show up when the right professionals are not involved early enough. Tim has built his reputation around helping aviation clients think more clearly about those risks, and he also brings a broader business perspective through his work with AERIS Insurance, AirReach, TVA, and his book, Quit Jacking Around. So today's conversation is a chance to learn more about Tim as a professional, as an entrepreneur, and as one of the people helping shape the AAOA community. We'll talk about his background, his approach to aviation risk, the lessons he's learned from building multiple ventures, and why collaboration among trusted aviation professionals in our industry matters so much for aircraft transactions, acquisitions, and operations. So I'm excited today to get to know Tim better about insurance, which is his main business, and some of the things that he brings to the table for AAOA and some of the reasons that he started AAOA. So welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Paula. I'm always glad to visit with you, and I'm excited about talking about AAOA and all the other things we're doing. Good
Fantastic.
stuff. Yeah.
Right. So what do you wish that more aircraft buyers understood about insurance before they begin a transaction?
Yeah. So, and this may come up more than once because I think a lot of people are used to buying insurance on their car or their home. And they think it's the same way. I need to call a dozen people, get quotes. And, the aviation insurance market is very small. There's only so many insurance companies, and most aircraft or aviation insurance specialist brokers all work with the same carriers. And unless it's assessed in 150 or something small, they'll only work with one broker, right? For anything complicated. And so it actually creates a big mess when you treat aviation insurance like automobile insurance because of the small niche and because the brokers are all working with the same carriers. And when you start crossing paths, it starts messing up information, and it doubles the carrier's workload to say, hey, we're already involved with the first broker you talked to, and games get played. And so it's not. It's more like hiring your attorney or your CPA, right? You do your due diligence and find the one you think is going to best represent you, because that's what an aircraft insurance broker does. They represent you to the market. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and why not? You know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of people don't know the aircraft insurance market just works differently, than the general market. And so some people who've been buying insurance for a long time, they know this, but they get the wrong conception about it. They still want to price shop, and really, um, it's really about finding the right broker who's not only going to get you the best terms, but are also going to make sure that you're not, cutting out the wrong things in order to get the best terms. Things that are going to have what we called in our webinar about aircraft insurance, those post-claim surprises or post-loss surprises, when you don't have coverage and you have an aircraft that's totaled and no coverage because you skipped a few things. So that's probably the number one thing, is just understanding how the market works. What an aviation insurance broker or underwriter is versus yeah, agent or broker versus an underwriter, and just how the market works. Because really, you got to find the right broker and let them do the job for you. They're your trusted advisor for purchasing aircraft insurance.
That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people come into this, as you said, with a lot of experience in business or a lot of experience in other areas of aviation. They maybe think they know more than they actually know. That willingness to bring to have a trusted relationship with somebody that actually knows insurance is really important. So, where do you see the most common risk gaps in aircraft acquisitions and ownership transactions?
Well, again, it goes back to the webinar that I did for AAOA on purchasing aircraft insurance, and it's not getting the details correct up front. Um, a lot of times, especially when something's last minute, you know, the named insured, we start using somebody's name. It gets changed at the last minute to a corporation. We start using the airplane for things it's not approved to be used for in the policy. We start letting pilots operate the aircraft that aren't approved. We don't have the non-owned coverages set up right. And so again, the number one key is getting the details correct, fully communicated up front, because as a reminder, the insurance coverage is dependent on a full representation of the correct risk information. And so I see all kinds of problems come out of that. And again, any attempt to cut corners will result in these issues. And so, kind of, this is a thematic thing, and the fact that communicating well with an experienced and thorough aviation insurance broker, are really keys to doing it right. And again, along in concert with other team members in the aircraft purchasing process.
Right. So, I guess similar to a lot of other things, things tend to go wrong when you try to work alone or when you try to game the system, one of those two, uh, which leads to another thought, which is basically that team of people that is involved with an aircraft transaction. So how can insurance professionals work more effectively with brokers and attorneys and lenders and tax advisors and other transaction partners?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's key. I mean, I repeat to our teams, often, clarity is everyone's friend. And, when the buyer is the main person, running in between places, information gets confused, the lender's requirements don't get to the insurance broker, the attorney's not included, and so they're left out of the loop. And so that's where having a seamless team of an aircraft purchase is really important. And there are some that happen organically, but that's really, again, we'll talk about the AAOA. That's why it was created, was to have a seamless team of people who communicate with each other, who know each other, who can, who are all serving the same group of people, these aircraft purchasers and operators, so that you can work in concert with direct communication lines to ensure all requirements are met, to ensure that the buyer is just, has a one-stop shop basically for, getting through the process. And that's really key, is having a team that communicates, because without clarity, we fly into, the wrong things, right? Or visibility is not good. We end up somewhere, but who knows where.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yep,
visibility is pretty key in all aspects of aviation, including the complex transactions and things like that.
exactly.
You have written a bunch of books. I can see them behind you right now. The most recent of which is a New York Times bestseller, Quit Jacking Around. Tell us what prompted you to write the book and what message comes from that that's most relevant to aviation professionals, maybe AAOA types.
Yeah, you bet. I've been a student for many years, a self-learner, and on everything from mindsets to goal setting to execution to vision, strategy, habits, um, to these structures or business systems. And really, as I look at all the great books out there, some of them you've talked about on your podcast, like Atomic Habits, I really didn't find anything that was front to end a system, because I think it's good to have habits, because good habits lead to other things. I think it's good to have a good mindset, but really, there wasn't a beginning to end, success system that helps you accomplish your goals and live out your best life, basically, that are more than just motivational or thinking tools. And so this is a very, you know, it goes to serving my team members, right? It goes to training my kids and certainly my customers in any business. It really serves them. And so this, the other three books are all aviation or aircraft insurance related. This one was just one that was inside of me that I had to get out. And what it does is it creates clarity, right? There's a lot of tools in there that helps individuals, or it can apply to businesses, create clarity about, the mindsets they need to have, who they are and how they operate, which helps them make decisions. It gives them clarity on how to create the desired outcomes they want in their business, short term and long term, which then allows them to take that information and make informed goals, right? Because you want your goals to be aligned with your purpose, your values, and your vision. And if they're not, you're gonna obviously going to have a harder time achieving them. And so, we obviously share this book as we get a chance, and it's really about creating that clarity in your life or in your business, and creating a system that aligns all of them to give you, and the tools to equip you, obviously, to you know build a success system, something that helps you achieve the desired outcomes you want to achieve. And so, whether that's an aviation professional such as our AAOA members, whether you're an attorney or a finance appraiser, assurance person, marketer, whatever it might be, or you are on my team. These principles really come in and help you gain clarity, give you a system that will help you accomplish something, and you know achieve a desired outcome. Because I'll walk into when I teach on this subject, I'll ask everyone who sets New Year's resolutions to raise their hand, and most of the
Of
hands go
course.
up. And
Yeah.
I just did this a quit jacking around workshop in February, and I said, how many people are still on those New Year's resolutions? 6 weeks into the year, and all the hands went down. And in fact, that's why there's a Quitters Day, a National Quitters Day, which you may have heard of. It's usually about the second Friday of the month, because that's usually by which point in the year people have quit their New Year's resolutions. And that's because they don't have the mindset, they don't have it's not aligned with their vision and values, and they don't have a system for, executing on them daily. Because, you know, I'm going to do this, but it's such a big, animal to achieve that, I can't eat the elephant, or I don't even know where to start. And that's what getting clarity through quit jacking around is all about. And so I love, just like you, Paula, we do webinars, we have podcasts, and I love to create value by learning things and sharing those things with others. And that's really what quit jacking around's about. It's something I needed in order to grow and achieve, and it's something I want for other people. So that's kind of a long narrative. I could honestly go on and on, because it doesn't make a lot of sense why an aviation insurance guy would end up writing a book on personal and business development. But it's just something that I've seen succeed so well in myself and other entrepreneurs and business leaders I've coached, that I just wanted to share it with the world.
Right. Well, and I think, we both talked about operating systems, in businesses and in everything else. And I think it fits really, really well with what we're doing with AAOA, and, that you do with your business, I do with my business, and probably every one of our members is doing with their business, but could probably do better. They say there's two ways to learn things. One is the cheap and easy way is to read a book. The expensive and hard way is to learn by experience. So I'd highly, highly recommend the book, and also, working together in some kind of an operating system with a shared framework, like, what's in Quit Jacking Around, or any other that
Yeah.
suits the purpose and makes sense. Um, Anything else you wanted to share about how that philosophy shows up in the way that you build? And we kind of talked about this, but there may be other things: how you build businesses, how you serve clients, how you collaborate, etc.
Well, there are so many great books on purpose. Simon Sinek's really popular book, Start with Why. Start with why. So what's the purpose? And understanding the purpose, uh, obviously, having shared values is key to anything, any relationships, certainly a business or formal or informal process. And so, these concepts bring clarity to that. So if you're entering into a collaboration, whether that's a business partnership or just what AAOA is kind of a marketing and shared client, service type of collaboration. You want to have, what's the purpose, you know, and that's why, we talk about the difference between AAOA and some of the other networking and casual marketing organizations. We're really a doing organization. We're about coming together, combining what we do in order to serve the client in a greater way than we could accomplish, and have a larger impact than doing things on our own. And so that's the why, and that's the purpose. And so obviously things like integrity, high standards, ethics, you know, growth. These are shared values that any collaborator, really needs to have, because if we don't share values, there's going to be friction, and that's what we want to avoid. And that's again why, AAOA is not about being a large member organization. We're not trying to lobby. We're not trying to make money. We're not trying to fund ourselves on memberships. We're trying to come together and provide a great value to a client. And as such, do exponentially more together than we could on our own. And so that's absolutely purpose, vision, values, and alignment, because really that's a key word, from quit jacking around, is alignment. So whether I'm
Hmm.
starting any company, um, any collaboration, any personal initiative, weight loss, financial goals, learning, capability type goals, it starts with why. I have to have the mindset that I can learn new things, that I can grow, that I can get through, setbacks. But B, I need to know the why, because if I'm not anchored in the purpose, then anything that comes up is going to blow it away. And that's absolutely key in business, in your personal life, and certainly in any collaboration. So that's how those concepts really all tie together, and then it goes from there. Clarity, being weighted in purpose, knowing your values, and then aligning those with the habits and actions and the things that you need to do to get those desired outcomes according to your purpose.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah,
yeah, if it's not aligned with your purpose, it's just too shallow or too superficial to survive. And
right.
that's why everybody quits by quitter's day.
Yep.
Right. Very smart.
Yeah.
In addition to your insurance work, you're involved in a lot of other ventures, including AirReach and TVA. What connects those businesses, and how do they reflect the philosophy we just talked about?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, AirReach Strategic Partners is a remote, back office staffing partner, and so that we provide great high quality, back in staffing positions to people, with people in the Philippines to people in the U.S. How does that start? Well, it started by serving AERIS. Like I think we've talked about before, people like, how can you write books and run multiple companies? I said it's because of the team that surrounds me. And really a lot. I've got my U.S. team that serves our customers, certainly on the aviation insurance business, but everyone's supported by our Philippine workers that are really good at the detailed back end tasks. I've got a strategic partner, which some people may know it as executive assistant, that runs my schedule, that keeps me organized and priorities, that helps actually really run each of the companies. That's on the lookout for the details that I miss,
Mhm.
and keeps us all organized as a whole, and helps make sure that we're in strategic alignment. I've got a right hand operations and IT person that makes sure everything happens. I've got a marketing person. When I record a podcast, it's basically a video. I mean, my strategic partner, Jelena, she's reaching out, setting the appointments, and for it, I come up with some of the questions I'll ask and the framework, but then I hit record. Once it's done, it's in the cloud, and my marketing team takes over. They produce it, ask any questions they may have. They produce it, put it on social media, and do the communication. The book, because of our teamwork, I was freed up, and of course, I did a lot of writing on Saturdays, and or in travel, but I did most of the writing, and then I had a team who edited it, a team who marketed it, who reviewed it. So anything I do is teamwork, and so I just really enjoyed my team in the Philippines and how they served my business, and I also wanted certain protections in place for the business, and it just made sense that we become a company there that was a direct employer with Philippine legal agreements and things, because the more I enjoyed and the more people saw what I'm doing, they're asking, "How do I get that?"
Yeah,
Paul, you asked me that question. How do I
I
get?
was just gonna say.
And so we just have developed the processes, the team, and the recruiting in order to, So it went to serve, Eris. We developed a team to serve Eris, and we got really good at it. And we had other people wanting help, and but when I do anything, I want it done the right way and to a high level of standards. And so we set it up, and now we're helping other people get
Yeah,
these. But it, it
and
it still serves Eris as well, and
yeah,
we couldn't do what we do at the level we do without those team members. And so it's still in alignment with our overarching vision at Eris, and it expands what we're able to do, because sometimes your opportunities aren't what you set out for in advance. They're the ones you see, and that align with who you are and what you hope to do. right? We can get shiny object syndrome and go in all kinds of different directions, but it aligns with it. The
Yeah.
other one you mentioned is Trivector Labs.
Actually, before you talk about Trivector Labs, I just wanted to jump in and talk about AERIS just briefly, because this is one of those collaborations that has worked really, really well. And, I was jealous of your team, Tim, because, you had these great people that were doing things for you. And we got to talking about how you have solved that problem and how you've made that change. And we hired a year and a half ago now, a person from AirReach. And then again, at the beginning of this year, we hired another one because it was such a great experience. And now I couldn't live without my team that follows that philosophy and makes that connection. And so that alignment and that um, finding things that work and then sharing what works instead of me having to go start a company over there, figure out all the crazy stuff. You've already got it knocked. So let me just piggyback on what you've learned and how you've made it work. And I think that's key to a lot of really successful relationships is finding somebody who's already doing something that you want to do, and um, without having to figure that all out for yourself. So anyway,
Yeah,
I
no,
didn't mean
absolutely. I
to.
mean, I think that's it,
Yeah.
and that's a value that some other partnerships or collaborations I'm a part of. It's is someone a go giver or are they just a taker? People who are just takers do not succeed in the long run. They may have short gains, and so we're always looking for go givers. And I love working with go givers. Paula, you're a go giver. If you learn something, you'll share it, and that's what we want to do. And yeah, it's exciting to help other people. It's exciting to see. I love creating meaningful employment for people in the Philippines because I see how awesome they are for our business and the businesses we set them up with. But all those people, they support other family members, and so when we create a role over there in employment, we're impacting not just the person but entire families and extended families and even communities. And so that's why I'm really passionate about it, and it's such a win-win-win. It's hard not to enjoy that side of the business, but it definitely is in alignment with what we're doing at AERIS, and it more we have a lot of team members there serving AERIS in a number of capacities. Obviously anyone who works directly with a client is someone licensed in the U.S., but they love the support they have because they can focus on their high value touches with our underwriters, with our vendor partners, and with our clients. And so it's a really good situation, and we enjoy it. And I enjoy. I think Paula. I go over there regularly. As we record this, I'm getting ready to be there in about a week, where I'll see your team members as well as mine. So I love doing that because I just think there's a right and a wrong way to work with a team, and that includes remote teams. Some people will go on a website, hire people, and they don't have the agreements they don't know they need. They don't have the involvement, the relationships, and it doesn't go as well. And that's really what AirReach is about. It went to having the right team for AirRis, and then helping our friends. A lot of our businesses are entrepreneurial companies. I have a lot of connections with entrepreneurs who own aircraft, who don't own aircraft, and so you know we're just aligning with what we're doing here, and so that's how that comes into play. But yeah, the other one, TVL, Trivector Labs, that's another collaboration. And I'm staying in my lane. I'm the aviation insurance person. I have the aviation insurance expertise and the aviation insurance connections. And I partner with an aviation insurance software engineer and an insurance product engineer, InsurTech wizard, to bring a solution for AI backed technology to the aviation insurance industry. But we're finding that our products are going to serve the industry at large. And again, it's about creating great value for your industry. And I'm not doing something else. I'm still staying in my lane of expertise. And I've brought in other people that have expertise that what we come and bring and what we produce together is going to have a much greater impact than we could have ever individually had on our own. And so that's why you constantly hear me talk about collaborations. It's absolutely, and when I'm thinking about growing AIRIS, AIRREACH, anything, I'm thinking about how can we collaborate with others to stay in the lane of what we do well, and then partner with other people to, all experience meaningful or exponential type growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that brings up AAOA, which is a organization that a lot of people think, well, you're in all these different lanes, but actually you are using these organizations to help you stay in your lane by engaging other people to do the things that they are good at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, that was the whole idea. I'm a collaboration, growth-minded person, entrepreneur, businessman, whatever. And, we've had all kinds of informal relationships with attorneys, finance, and people work with different folks. And we all market individually. We all, and so some referrals are nice. And I'm like, I really want to get together, the best of the best and collaborate marketing, educating the client, the target audience, educating one another, creating the clarity and seamless communication. And that's really why we started AAOA, was just to bring that, and ultimately, I'm speaking from the perspective of a founding member, whatever, and in terms of this is how I can better serve our client and have exponential growth. But at the end of the day, it's about what the client wants, and they want as less friction as possible. If they got to figure out, they call this guy and they say, well, you ought to talk to him, and then you make a couple calls there. It creates a lot more friction and headache, and then maybe you leave out one of the key pieces, like the attorney, for instance, that really should be involved.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's where having a network of collaborative, communicative people sharing those values that are wanting to give and create value, it changes the game, not only for us as each individual business, because we're combining our efforts to do something bigger, but it ultimately makes it less friction for an aircraft buyer or operator to operate their aircraft, because they know that here is a trusted source of individuals that they've combined to provide less headache and friction for me, and a coordinated effort where I'm not going to have the lender not be on the same page with the legal guy, with the insurance person, with the appraisal lady,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever may be involved. Uh,
Right.
so, yeah, I mean that again, a lot of my principles are the same. You've got all this alignment, but one of my deep alignments is forming great collaborations. I mean, collaborations are tremendous these days. You may be aware of a company called Nike.
Of course.
You also may be separately aware of a gentleman named Michael Jordan, who was a basketball player a few years back.
I may have heard of him,
And
right?
he and they both had great success, but my goodness, what success they had to coming together on producing the Air Jordan shoe. Far
Mhm.
more exponential than they would on their own. I featured Mr. Jordan in my book, Quit Jacking Around, when it came to dealing with mindset and things like that, with what he went through. But I mean, everywhere you look, companies are collaborating. I think Nike and Tiffany did a collaboration on a shoe where they used the
Mhm.
Tiffany color. I think one of the Jenner girls has a collaboration with Nike, and they're everywhere. And that's something we've done very good at informally in aviation, but not formally. And so AAOA is something formal that, again, ultimately it's amazing for the members because it's something meaningful. It's not just a networking group. It's not just referrals. It's a legitimate collaboration where you're doing work together, making life better for the customer, and all at the same time then growing, as a result of what the output of that is.
Exactly. I think you probably know, John and I have gone through 2 separate aircraft transactions, with tiny little 172s, but still it was a maze, for someone who is unfamiliar, and we're both, I think, savvy business people, but still we were hitting dead end after dead end of, different things that we ran into during those transactions and that ownership and then exiting those aircraft
Right.
that we had no idea what was coming because we didn't know who to talk to. So,
Yep.
from a customer's point of view, having some kind of alignment or some kind of a group that would make that seamless is just such a great uh, game changer for the customer experience, which is really
Right.
what we're in it for, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. So, can you maybe share an example of naming names or not naming names of a time when coordination between people made an aircraft transaction run smoother, or maybe a problem was solved or averted, or something
Yeah.
along those lines?
I think what we alluded to, I won't name names right now, but I mean, just the coordination between legal, finance, tax, and insurance in advance. Um, I can tell you how many times that's not been there. and there's delayed closings. There's this certificate doesn't mean a requirement. So I'm like, you didn't send any requirements. you know, uh, uh, I can count on a lot more hands and toes and marks on the wall the times that it's been uncoordinated, and there's friction. The customer's frustrated; they can't close. Um, there's a lot of horror stories, and so the ones that go well is a coordinated team who communicate well, and it's done in advance. And it's a night and day difference, Paula. Just to what you alluded to, when you got a group of people who talk to each other, who are covering the basis, it makes all the difference, in an aircraft transaction. And unfortunately, there's not as many good ones as there are bad ones at times. But
Right,
what, we,
exactly.
what we're looking to solve.
Exactly. All right. So coming back to, is there any particular misconception, if we boil it down to any one, most common misconception that people have about aircraft insurance?
Yeah, I would think it goes back to my first thing and the fact that they think buying aircraft insurance is like buying auto insurance. I mean that's the big deal, and uh, you know there's a lot more to it because basically you can buy any car and anyone will insure it and anyone can drive it, and unless you can loan it to friends, whatever, but it's much more restrictive with aircraft. It's got to have approved use, which is very specific to the insurance company. It's got to be approved pilots, and it all has to be communicated up front. And if you call one person, you're not necessarily, you're probably not going to get, it's not like calling a bunch of direct writers. You're calling the same people, the people working with the same people. So you got to
Yeah.
know the one you got to work with the ones who really are not just dealing with price, but dealing with the specific coverage issues because every risk has different issues, and those issues when they're paired with a specific insurance company could be different, and that's why having that level of expertise is important. So just
Yeah.
understanding that market, and then I think that's the hard part is how do you do your due diligence to know you got the person looking at the coverage, it's giving you a good price, and say what markets are cheaper on this or not, because cheap can get expensive in the event of a loss.
Absolutely. And I can say that from the customer point of view. We didn't know you in 2006,
Right.
when we made our purchase. And it was a constant, what do you mean we can't do this? And what do you mean we can't do that? And what do you mean we can't do the other thing? Because we didn't look for somebody who could educate us on how to make this work. We were just looking to make this work. And we thought it was far simpler than it was ever going to be,
Yeah.
coming into an aircraft transaction.
You're not alone.
Right, we thought we were so smart, but our smarts came from somewhere other than aviation, at that time, and, that just really underlines the, importance of knowing somebody in the industry that can help educate you and is interested in helping educate you.
Right.
To that end, what is the one piece of advice you would give to anyone involved in an aircraft transaction this year? Is there anything new that we should know or anything different, with all the craziness going on in the world that we should know?
Well, there's a lot going on, and you know, ultimately it comes back to you'll find I'm a repetitive person on key things, Paula, and it's about having the right team. You know, um, you know, you have a desired outcome, and so when we try to do things on our own, um, we don't always have the best outcome. Paula, I can do a few things around the house. I remember my first house was one that was built, I don't know, in the 50s, and I tried to redo a bathroom on my own, replace the toilet and some tiles. And believe it or not, all of the hardware and everything that was underneath it was not everything I hoped for. And so
Imagine
my
that.
my effort to save a few bucks ended up being much more exponentially expensive in the process. And so, what I've one of the things I've come to learn in all my readings and learnings and programs that I'm involved with is we all have unique abilities and we have what we know well. And we know what we know. Sometimes and often we know what we don't know, but too often we don't know what we don't know. And so if your head's spinning by now, that's okay. At the end of the day, aircraft aren't something to try to do yourself. It's not something to do on the cheap. If you really can't afford it, find other ways, renting, whatever else. But having a team and doing it right legally, tax, finance, insurance, is so key to not getting yourself into trouble. And that piece of advice to have the right team and don't just, calling around for the cheapest quote is for any of the services, insurance, legal, finance, you need someone who knows what they're doing at the end of the day, because why you're hiring them is not to get through a transaction. It's to protect yourself from many issues going forward. And certainly as you get into bigger aircraft and turbine, we want to start letting people use it. We want to enter dry leases. And you start getting into issues when you do that. When you start letting people pay to use your aircraft, you get into insurance issues and you potentially get into FAA issues. And so, you know, um, there's entire attorneys that, have studied this at great length to make sure you don't get into, incidental charter, void your insurance policy is, on the insurance side. And so that, anyway, to make a long answer to your question, having the right team and don't skip. This is not aircraft are not something that you want to mess with, cutting corners. So have this isn't something for your local attorney who handles your farm or your contracting business. You need aviation, experts who um, are looking to keep you out of trouble and get you set up right for success, because it's great, when it's done right, you're protected well. What a great thing to have is aviation. It's wonderful business tool. It's a wonderful fun thing. It's a great industry as long as it's done right. But given you know, the high risk nature and the values and the things that aircraft do, it's something you have to take seriously. And just like being a pilot, if you respect the aircraft, train well, fly regularly, it goes great for the most part, right? But if you cut corners, don't do those things, it can lead to bad results. Same thing when you're purchasing, get the right team and do it right. It will pay dividends and you will enjoy aviation, whether as a business consumer or a pilot, much, much more when it's set up right.
Absolutely. And just to tie that all together, one of the things that I learned from your book, and of course, um, there's the quote that everybody's familiar with, which is, you become the average of the five people that you spend the most time with.
Right.
Being intentional, about your operating system, including the network of people that you surround yourself with. I think a lot of us have done that kind of accidentally over the years, and then find ourselves in a group of people that are, uh, you know, better and worse than others. But if we are intentional about the people that we choose to associate with, that do our insurance, that handle our transactions, that manage the bits of our business that are the most important to us, we spend a lot of time with that. And these are really important decisions. So I really love what you put together in the Quit Jacking Around and the AERIS and the AirReach and the TVL. I'm looking forward to seeing how that fits into the picture as well. So that's
Yes.
really
Yeah,
fun.
I can't wait to show. We got some pretty neat things coming for pilots, and as we record this, I can't share all that yet, but it's really, really cool what's coming out of that collaboration. I'm really excited about it.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to see it. And of course, we'll be excited to share it as we're able to. So thank you for spending the time today. I know you're super
Sure.
busy running 6 or 7 businesses and writing another book probably and everything else you got going on. So thanks for taking the time today.
You bet. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to you, and again, just helping people grow. You know, um, I'll just tell you a quick story. Is my marketing guy Keen? He got to
Yep.
help all the content as we were building up to um, publishing Quit Jacking Around, and he started as we did video content and the principles, and he would look at different chapters. He started implementing it, and started getting healthy, started reaching new goals. And so there's not much more rewarding than walking alongside someone and helping them. You can't do it for them, you can't tell them what to do, but you can provide them with principles and seeing them grow and succeed. And the same is true with walking alongside someone in an aircraft insurance purchase for their new aircraft, or helping a business market and grow. That's such a rewarding thing. So, that's just what I take away from, doing the things that you and I do and creating value for the people, helping them learn and grow. It's one of the most rewarding things I think you and I get to do. And so if anyone took away any value from this conversation today, that's a huge win. So I appreciate you reaching out and asking us to do this. And I enjoyed it as always. So thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Tim.